Another thing on this Tiger Cub I'm going to suggest might be looked into. Before I ran the engine, initially, obviously it wouldn't go initially, but once it was ready to go I checked all the oils and everything, and the engine oil and the gearbox oil were fine. The oil in the primary case took some topping up before it came out the level plug, and it seemed when I rode the machine I came back and there was a bit of oil spattered around on the rear chain and some on the side wall of the tyre. Not a hell of a lot, but I've seen it before, and since then I've run the engine in the workshop and it produced quite a pool of oil on the floor underneath itself, and it seemed to be coming from the back of the primary chain case, and I've seen this before, and I think what's happening, and it would explain why the oil in the primary chain case needed topping up by quite an amount. On a Tiger Cub, I've had my own Tiger Cubs do it, but on a Tiger Cub you've got on the drive side main bearing you've got an oil seal outboard of it between the main bearing and the engine sprocket, and if that fails or is fitted the wrong way round, or even not there at all, as I've seen in some cases, obviously the engine, instead of breathing by the means that it was designed with, it'll breathe past the drive side main bearing into the primary case, and it doesn't matter whether you've got a good seal or not on the gearbox main shaft, the pressure will force oil out of there. Obviously when the engine's running you've got the clutches spinning and flinging the oil around. Any fault in the drive side crankshaft oil seal will allow the engine to breathe in there and pressurise it. The oil gets flung around and it looks for a way out, and it comes out past the seal behind the clutch and runs down the back of the primary case. What I've sort of worked out over the years is when these engines do that, when you're riding the bike and you're on the move, the leakage isn't that dramatic, but if you're at a standstill with the engine running for any reason, and perhaps you might be revving it and whatever, checking the timing or whatever you're doing, and the next thing a great big pool of oil appears underneath them, I think the reason that they leak more at a standstill is because the main shaft sleeve gear that the gearbox sprocket attaches to is not spinning, and sticking out from that sleeve gear and going through the back of the primary case is the bronze bush which runs in the seal at the back of the primary case behind the clutch, and I've got a feeling that that little bit of the bronze bush that sticks through behind the clutch, when it's spinning, when the bike is on the move, the centrifugal force throws most of the oil away that tries to get out. But when you're at a standstill, that's not spinning, and then the oil gets forced past it, runs down the back of the primary chain case and makes a nice little pool on the ground. And I've got a strong feeling that the crankshaft oil seal on the drive side needs replacing on this engine, and I'm going to talk to the owner about that and see if he would like to do it. But I know what my answer would be, and I've stopped that problem in the past just by changing that seal. As can be seen, I've got this Tiger Cub running and warming through, obviously, and the reason I'm doing it now is I've got the primary chain case drained. I've emptied it, there's no oil in there. I just checked the gearbox oil again, and there's still drips of oil coming through the level plug on that one, so I know that it hasn't leaked oil from the gearbox, it hasn't leaked oil from the engine. The big oil leak that I've been seeing has been coming from the primary side, and usually when the bike is stationary with the engine running, that's when it leaks worse, and I've had that before on one of my Tiger Cubs. And I just wanted to verify, and I've satisfied myself that it is the case, that the primary chain case oil is getting forced out through the clutch main shaft hole in the back of the primary case by pressure coming past the engine's crankshaft main bearing seal. What's happening is, I know that this is what it's doing because I've seen it before. When the piston comes down, when the engine's running, the pressure not only sort of gets sorted out by the engine's own breathing system, but it's much easier for it to just come past a damaged or missing crankshaft oil seal into the primary case and out. There is a seal as such, you can loosely describe as a seal behind the clutch. It do its job usually, and you won't get any oil pouring out of it, but if you've got the engine pressurising the primary case, then it will. And the reason it leaks more when the bike's not moving is because obviously the chain and the sprocket and the main shaft sleeve gear aren't spinning. Now the main shaft sleeve gear has got a bronze bush on it that sticks out into the primary case. It passes through the seal, and I think what happens is when the engine's running and pressurising the primary case through a bad seal, crankshaft seal, is the oil is getting spun and flung about by the primary chain and the clutch, and obviously some of it runs down the back of the primary case and gets forced blown out. When you're riding the bike, when it's on the move, the leakage is far less than when it's stationary, and that is because I think the bronze bush that sticks out through the main shaft sleeve gear and into the chain case is spinning, and I think the oil lands on it the same, but because it's spinning it gets flung away by the centrifugal force, and what gets past it is much less when a bike is on the move than when it's at a standstill. And when it's at a standstill it can rapidly form a pool of oil underneath it, whereas on the move you might just get some spatters of oil on the wall of the tyre and on the rim, and the chain might get wet with oil, but the oil comes out a lot more quickly at a standstill. So I've already ordered a crankshaft seal for the drive side, so I'm going to get this bike into the workshop and take the primary cover off, where I can dismantle the clutch and get the alternator rotor off, etc., and get access to the seal that I obviously either need to change or fit at all, if there may not even be one there. I don't know what we're going to find, but I'm sure that that will nail the culprit. Well, I've got the clutch and the alternator components out the way now, and look what we got here. The crankshaft oil seal facing the wrong way round, with the spring on the outside. That should be facing the engine, so that'll just let the engine blow pretty much anything it wants past and into the primary case. And as for the seal here being worn, well, it's not even there, so they only cost a few quid, so I've already ordered them because I knew that at the very least I'd change the seals, but good job I ordered one of these because there isn't one there at all. The bronze bush can possibly just be seen there. It doesn't actually poke through on these. It's a while since I've done one of these, but on some machines they do. But the seal actually sort of fits and crimps over that sort of there, and then obviously the sort of inner diameter of the seal will grip the main shaft lightly and seal on that. So no seal at all. I think we're going to improve on the oil leak situation there. So all I need to do now is I might as well get this seal out ready. It's unlikely that I'll get it out without damaging it, so there's no point really in thinking I can turn it over, and I've got to wait for the post to come anyway to bring me this seal, so I'll get this one out and fit the new one when it comes, and then the primary drive side can all go back together and we should have a leak-free Triumph Tiger Cub.